Miracles of Today by William Cassiere. Miracles of Today, Chapter 11, Episode of the Nightclub. Man, know thyself, said the Delphian oracle. But who knows himself until he begins to study the laws of life? Then and then only does a man really begin to know himself, and knowing the worst, seeks to make the baser metals into the gold of character. The master character of the God-man made flesh. He then seeks to make union with the Christ, as Jesus did in the Ascension. This is the summum bonum of human existence. Brother Bill. Be still and know that I am God. I will be exalted among the heathen. I will be exalted in the earth. Psalms 46:10. On opening night of a Western 10-day class, a man and his wife came to ask for an appointment. When the interview was in progress, the man told this story for both himself and his family. We have two growing girls, aged 12 and 14. They are, as you might know, at the impressionable age. Now, next door to us lived a man who lost his wife. He could not stay in his house. It reminded him too much of the missing loved one, so he leased his home and went away. The new occupant turned the home into a speakeasy. The cursing and swearing, let alone the other language used in the main rooms of the saloon, wafted on the evening air right into our home. It was especially annoying because all our bedrooms are on that side toward the speakeasy. It isn't good for those children to be awakened from their rest to hear fighting and carousing such as goes on over there. What we would like to know is, can we get rid of that speakeasy? What is the great law on that sort of thing? Will you help us? There is, I replied, a decree that we can use which will remedy the situation. What is it? They asked. Many people decree without consideration of circumstances or their right to so decree, I replied. See that thy decree is such as can wrong no man and is not ignoble. Then will it take earthly form and draw nigh unto thee, I quoted, then continued. Mighty I am presence, in thy great love, wisdom, and power, thou knowest what is required. Enfold these two homes in thy great radiance and release whatsoever power is required to bring thy perfection into being here. If in thy wisdom we are out of place here, then remove us to our perfect place and do it harmoniously. If, on the other hand, the other people are out of place, then take command of that too, and remove them. And we thank thee it is done. The students went home, but several days later, after one of the meetings of the class, they came again. We are sorry to have to report, they said, that the speakeasy is still there. How do you know that you are not supposed to move? I inquired. Well, we thought of that, they replied, and continued. We own our little place there. Our children were born there. Our ties are all there. This man surely would not care to use a residence for this place of business if he could possibly use a better located place. He rents instead of owning his property, so we feel that he, rather than we, should move. Very well, I replied. You have made your choice. Now stick to it and see what happens. Several days went by, and then they came once more to report. When we asked you to make the decree, this man had only 6 or 7 cars parked around the place. Last night he had 21 cars, and the party really got rough before morning. It don't look like your decree is any good. Wait a minute, my friends. It may be that we haven't done our work correctly. There is some reason. Perhaps we have asked amiss. Return to me tomorrow, as it is my last day here. Tonight I'll do some work on this condition. I'll talk to God about it, because when we talk to God, trouble goes. If we talk to people, trouble grows. Do not be discouraged. That night I meditated and decreed about the speakeasy, as well as my other seeming problems, and gave it over to the presence of God. It is well to take our problems to God, then take our human hands off. In other words, let go and let God. This I had learned was a wise thing to do. On the following morning, the telephone rang in my hotel room. My friends were downstairs and were asking if I could see them. Yes, I answered. I'll be down in 5 minutes. See you in the lobby. Several minutes later, the news was broken to me. The speakeasy was closed. The man had left the key with them and had gone. They had asked him, "What happened to make you close up? You had more cars and more people in the last week than ever before. Why do you close up when business is so good?" "Business good, huh?" he snorted. "All deadheads. Biggest crowds I ever had, but only a few paid. The rest drank on the house, and when I get flustered, I get mad, and when I get mad, I explode. So I told 'em all to go to hurrah and get out. Here's my key. You can give it to the owner when you see him." And the fellow went off, mumbling to himself about deadheads. We rejoiced once again in the fact that the law had fulfilled the statements of the light of God that never fails, for the light of God never fails. From The Magic Presence by Godfrey Ray King. Miracles of Today, Chapter 12, Episode of the Used Car Lot. It has been wrongly stated that no man can see God and live. But I say unto you that no man can see God and continue to live as he has lived. Nor yet can any man live according to the divine plan and not see God. Brother Bill. Beloved, now are we the sons of God. 1 John 3:2. He which is of God, he hath seen the Father. St. John 6:46. Then what if you shall see the Son of Man ascend up where he was before? St. John 6:62. Out on the Pacific coast, I had a seeming condition with my car, which not only did not respond to continuous decrees, but did not respond to mechanical work either. I finally decided to trade it for a new car. I talked to several dealers, and one made a proposition which sounded reasonable. I told him I would think over his proposition, and if it seemed advisable, I would return in the morning. "What is your name and address?" the dealer asked. "No matter," I replied. "You won't have to chase me, nor sell me against my will, for if my mind is settled on this car, I shall be here and the deal can be closed tomorrow morning." So saying, I left the dealer's place and returned to my hotel. That evening, my car failed me just as I was crossing the Pacific Electric tracks. The motorman of the train saw me in time to stop, or there would have been an accident. That settled it, and I took it up with the presence that night before going to bed. If the proposition is changed, I shall know that you do not want me to have that car. But if, on the other hand, great presence of life, you do want me to have the car, then see that the deal remains as quoted, that the figures are not changed 1 penny. The next morning, I saw the owner of the car agency. "Hello there," he called in greeting. "I want to see you. Let's go into my office. Do you know, I made a mistake on your car. I thought yours was of a later model, but if you want our car, I'll stick to my figures and the deal is on." The deal was quickly made, and then he asked me, "Say, you've got something and I'd like to know what it is. What is your belief anyway?" I explained that my belief was that Jesus had told the truth, that his belief was mine, and that I believed in his words. "How does it work?" he asked. Again, I explained as best I could in a few words. "Will it sell cars?" he asked. "Oh, yes, the law can be used to sell cars." And I explained my decree of the previous night, that the deal be not changed 1 iota. "Your first words to me were that you would not change the deal, that you'd stick to your figures. So you see, it works. Will you help me sell my used cars? I have a whole car lot overflowing with them." It must be remembered that this episode took place in 1938, and that the used car situation now in 1947 is very different. I promised to help him if he would ask God for help in the sale of those cars. "Do not be afraid to ask," I warned him. God knows who can buy 100 cars as easily as most folks can buy one. Ask, and you shall receive. Okay, I'll do it, he assured me. That night I talked to the presence about the cars and asked that he direct the perfect buyer or buyers to the car lot, that they buy them at the perfect prices at the perfect time. Next day I left to conduct a class elsewhere, and when I returned several days later, I noted that the car lot was empty. I saw my friend the owner, and in reply to my question, "What happened?" he said, "Oh, some fellow came in from the Hawaiian Islands who wanted the entire batch, and I sold them." "Did you get the right price?" "Oh, yes," he replied. The price was very fair for what cars remained. Quite a few were sold before he made up his mind. He looked at cars in several cities before he returned, and what's more, he paid cash. So once again, the law of life prevailed. Miracles of Today, Chapter 13, Episode of the Cloudburst. It is not what a man says, nor yet what a man says that he does. He who says nothing at all is often most entitled to respect. But the gods look upon man in his attempt to do what is the righteous thing. Neither his success nor his failure is weighed in the balanced scales, but the attitude in the doing. Brother Bill. For thus saith the Lord, You shall not see wind, neither shall you see rain, yet that valley shall be filled with water, that you may drink, both ye and your cattle and your beasts. 2 Kings 3:17. After a particularly hot summer in Arizona, the water supply was running very short in the reservoirs. The condition was evidently serious enough so that the newspapers mentioned it in their columns. The people were advised to waste no water and to use what was necessary sparingly. It was even suggested that irrigation be curtailed. At the class which was in session at the Women's Club, the subject of conversation among the students was the exceptionally long drought and the shortage of water. "Why talk about it, O ye of little faith?" I inquired. "There be some among you surely who believe in God sufficiently to ask him for succor. It is well at time to goad the children of light, for in spite of all their knowledge they will look for someone else to do the work. This is easily explained in this fashion. By themselves, they are willing to tackle a problem that needs their own solution, but in public, fear stops them. Fear of failure? The light of God cannot fail. People fail, but God never. Said I not unto thee, that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? St. John 11:40. What if Jesus had been afraid before the tomb of Lazarus? No. Let us rather so live and so act that the light can flow through us to fulfill the destiny of the children of light. It comes to me that the sinister forces can project their mental power upon innocent people. A Hitler was able to subject millions to his will, wrong though it was. Yet we quake at the seeming failure of our first attempt to do good. Why? Is it human nature? Persist in well-doing, no matter if the heavens fall. Don't give up. Meditate on that which you are trying to accomplish. Turn it over well in your mind. Is it ignoble? Is it reasonable? If you feel that it is acceptable to God and man, then stick to it. It is better to make a mistake in asking wrongly than to do nothing at all. A coward is a coward to God and man. Even people say of one who errs, "Oh well, he meant well, we'll excuse him." Remember, to err is human, to forgive divine. Just don't make a habit of excusing yourself after erring intentionally, that's all. So to make the point, I led the class that day in a decree for rain. Mighty I Am Presence, release rain sufficient to fill the reservoirs full to overflowing. We thank thee, it is done. During the afternoon class, the city cooled off noticeably, and dark clouds formed over the mountains about the city. After the session was finished, we went about our business as usual. Later, the afternoon papers revealed that a cloudburst in the mountains had filled the reservoirs and the drought was over. So praise God, from whom all blessings flow.
Praise God, from whom all blessings flow. Praise Him, all creatures here below. Praise Him above, ye heavenly hosts.
Of today, Chapter 14, Episode of the Dying Boy. A perfect musician can only make imperfect music upon a defective instrument, and likewise God, acting through your conscience and reason, can make only imperfect expressions in imperfect men. Will L. Garver, in Brother of the Third Degree. Jesus said unto her, I am the resurrection and the life. He that believeth in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. And whosoever liveth and believeth in me shall never die. Believest thou this? St. John 11:25 and 26. This episode, like some others, is hard to comprehend. When one finds a subject which is hard to assimilate and digest, rather than say to yourself, "Oh, that's impossible," deliberate a moment on the words of the Scriptures. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Deliberation is good. Contemplation also is good. Fasting and prayer with deliberation is better, if done correctly. Jesus often betook himself to the mountains to fast and to pray with the Father in secret. He was rewarded openly. Ponder on this. The boy of whom we speak was young. If we recall it correctly, his age was 18 or thereabouts. His age was in his favor. Youth is resilient. The word we received, however, was that he had been given up, and that only death could release his sufferings. I was called to his bedside by his grief-stricken parents. They had just recently lost another boy. Their pleading to me was heartbreaking. I requested that everyone leave the room. They did so, but left the door ajar. I closed it. Human nature is such that if his life depended on the closed door remaining closed, the dying boy would have severed the silver cord and released himself. Luckily, this was not the case, however, as we soon ascertained. I started my calls to the Father to enfold and protect me and to see that I did not ask amiss. Then I began my call as Jesus did at the tomb of Lazarus, finishing with, "And now, O mighty presence of life, look into this boy's heart, read the record there, and if it be that he must be taken, then see that it is accomplished without pain or distress. Alleviate the pain in the hearts of his parents, replacing it with thy love and peace. If, on the other hand, great masterful presence, this boy can be restored to the heart of his home in perfect health and peace, wilt thou do it? I ask this in the name and by the power of my ascended Jesus Christ's self." When I had come to that part of my prayer, look into this boy's heart, his parents could not resist the impulse, opened the door softly, and tiptoed to the bedside and wept, even while I prayed. When I had finished my decree, the boy looked up at his parents, for he had regained consciousness during my visit in his room. He listened a moment to their weeping, then gently took his mother's hand and said, "Don't cry. I'll be all right. Didn't you hear the prayer? Well, I'm going to be okay." And he was all right in a very short time. So once again I can quote Jesus' words in John 11:40. "Said I not unto thee that if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God?"
Praise God, from whom all blessings flow.
Miracles of Today, Chapter 15. The young couple and the new car. What a man thinks he becomes, saith the ancient axiom. Whoso thinketh deeply on the Christ within cannot help but take on Christian attributes. But I say unto you that most Christians are adulterers in more ways than one, and to call yourself a Christian or to have another call you such does not make it so. Only one thing can make a man a Christ man, and that is living it to the hilt. The rules are found only by thinking deeply on the Christ within. Brother Bill. There shall no straw be given you, yet you shall make bricks without straw. Exodus 5:18. A young couple came to me in one of my classes asking for a decree to assist them in getting a new car. We want a perfect car, as you express it, Brother Bill, not like the one you told the class about that was always out of order, although it was a new car. We will not be able to get it for 6 months. We want to pay cash for it. Our idea is to get a new car, but you could aid us in our desire and see that nothing interferes so that we can have it for our vacation next summer. Very well, I said to them, and gave this decree. Great presence of life and light, release to us the perfect car at the perfect time and at the perfect price. We thank thee, beloved, and accept. The following week the couple returned. They were at variance in their ideas on the perfect car. It seemed that one preferred a Chevy and the other preferred a Ford. Now look, you kids, make up your minds. Besides, you asked God for a perfect car, so why not leave the make of the car up to him as he knows what car you should have, I suggested. Well, they countered, we can't afford a car out of that price range, but neither can we agree on the make. Why ask him at all, then, if you are going to take it out of his hands? Now I suggest that you wait and see what he will do. I further suggest that you keep up your decree once a day and keep your human hands off. Forget your choice, both of you, and let him decide on the make and the model. How can we know which car will be the perfect car? They asked. Do not worry about that. You will know because when the Father selects the perfect car for you, it will be perfect. In addition, he will direct it to you in such a manner that there will be no mistake about it. So rest at peace. The couple came to class regularly, and I inquired from time to time as to their progress. Their savings account was growing week by week. The car was getting to seem closer and closer to an accomplished fact. What is more, they had decided to leave all in the hand of God. Finally, one day after class, they told me of their remarkable success. The story follows. One of the salesmen, employed by the same company as the young man, was being transferred to a different branch. The new position did not require a sales car for traveling. He had been paying on a new Dodge to be delivered in 30 days. His equity in the Dodge was $500. He would sell it for $300 cash. If you want the Dodge, act quick, for I must leave here this weekend. What I do must be done quickly, he explained. The young man countered with, My wife and I will be at your house tonight. We will have your answer and the cash if we decide to take the Dodge. That night, all arrangements were made and the transfer of the equity was agreeable to the dealer. The young couple now had a car in the next price range. They had it at the same price to them that they would have paid for a Ford or a Chevy. What is more, the car performed beautifully. It was their perfect car. God works in wondrous ways his miracles to perform. Miracles of Today, Chapter 16, Episode of the Vanishing Theater. Brother Bill. While ye have light, believe in the light, that ye may be the children of light. St. John 12:36. This episode is perhaps the most unusual in its way of all that came into my experience. Yet, like all the others, the explanation is perfectly simple to God. As for myself, I cannot even attempt an explanation. Who am I that I should try? That it did happen, however, in the city of Cleveland, Ohio, I can attest. To this day I have not been able to account for this singular circumstance, nor the fact that the theater in which it happened disappeared from the block, or perchance from the face of the earth. Who can question the works of God, who works in mysterious ways his miracles to perform? Traveling as we did about the country, we would hear of certain movies that were along the lines of our trend of thought, or that contained great truths and were valuable entertainment for the students. Such a picture, for instance, was Lost Horizon. Those that we heard of in our traveling about, we made an effort to see, in spite of the fact that I often lectured afternoon and evening for 10 days, and then made one-day appearances in the smaller cities and towns until my next class of 10 days. On this occasion, my class in the city was to commence in a few days. I took advantage of the opportunity to rest and recuperate, and it was during such days of waiting that I sometimes enjoyed a good picture. I had arrived late at the hotel the night before, consequently had slept later in the morning than usual. After a refreshing shower and shave, I told my secretaries where I was going, but that I might not return until about 5 in the afternoon, when we could all go to dinner at the cafeteria. I left for brunch, and after a satisfactory repast, started to look about for an interesting movie. About the second door from the cafeteria on the opposite side of the street was a small theater. Ordinarily, we do not go into the smaller picture houses because we usually found we had already seen the pictures being shown there. In this instance, however, the picture was one on our list of, by all means, see this one. The name of the picture was, I believe, Second Floor Back. Some pictures appeal so much that one cannot resist seeing it through to the end the second time if one has come in the middle of the first run. I enjoyed the picture thoroughly, and by the time I had seen the full run, the better to get some parts of it, it was time to get back to the hotel. When I met with my workers and secretaries, I told them of having seen the picture and remarked that we might all profit by seeing it. I could even see it again and enjoy it, I said. Let's go after dinner, someone suggested. It's a go, the others assented, so off we went to dinner, and then to see Second Floor Back. In a matter of moments, we were in front of the building across from the cafeteria. But what was this? What had happened? The theater was not a theater at all, but a store, closed for the day. In all that block, there was no theater. We looked on other streets. No theater was showing Second Floor Back. Finally, we asked at another picture house, and the manager there said there was no such picture showing at any theater in the city of Cleveland. Here's the list. Look for yourself, he said, and handed me the list. We appealed to the advertisements in the papers and finally to the Motion Picture Distributors Association. There was no such picture showing, even in the suburbs. Where had I spent the afternoon? How account for the fact that I could tell the story? How account for the fact that such a picture had been made? All of these questions remain unanswered. I only know I have met people who have had a similar experience.
All our praises, all our worship.
Miracles of Today, Chapter 17, Episode of the Healed Arm. If a man be not tried to the utmost, how shall the gods or even he himself know what weaknesses are hidden and linger still in him? If a man still be not tried in the fires of use, how can he know his own strength? Brother Bell. Then saith he to the man, Stretch forth thine hand. And he stretched it forth, and it was restored whole, like as the other. Matthew 12:13. While I do not feel free to reveal the name of the city in which this episode took place, I may say that it was in one of our very large cities. This part of the episode was revealed by subsequent events, the lady herself telling how she exchanged seats with another student, a friend who did not care to sit so far to the front. The hall was small, the crowd large. Extra chairs were placed in front of the regular rows of seats to accommodate additional seekers. So many additional seats were placed that the knees of the people in the first row touched the edge of the platform. Our Lady who received the healing was seated in the center of the hall next to the wall. A friend who had one of the chairs directly in front of the platform felt that being placed so close to the lectern was objectionable. At any rate, she stood and looked about, saw this friend seated in the center, and suggested that they trade seats. Our Lady of the episode agreed to the exchange of seats, and the change was quickly made. As I said before, this was revealed to me later when I heard the story of the healing, the exchange of seats having taken place before I came onto the platform. At any rate, the great law placed the two principal actors of the episode into their rightful places. She was in a front seat, and I was on the platform. Now the lady had told no one of her need, nor did I have any outer concept of her distress. It seems, according to her story, that she decided not to return that evening to the class and had prepared to do some preserving and canning. During the process, something occurred to cause her to change her mind. In some way, the boiling contents of a kettle were overturned upon her arm. The ensuing burns were serious and severe, as well as painful. Before the evening was spent, she decided that it might be best to return to the class that night. Besides, she told herself, I might get a healing. She came to class, made the aforementioned exchange of seats, placing her in the front row of newly placed chairs and in the place where the healing might take place according to the plan of her presence. After our usual invocation to God and our song service, we proceeded with the evening's work. The truth of the light of God is varied. Many themes are possible, but on that particular night, the lecture was on eternal youth and health. During the evening, I accepted written questions, and the one in particular with which we are concerned was from a gentleman whose baby had received injuries. The hand and arm, as I recall, had been caught in a piece of machinery and badly crushed. What would you suggest? The question read. What colors of rays would you use, and how would you use them? My answer was in the manner of many Americans who reply to a question with another question. Which arm is it? The right, was his reply. Then I explained, I'd raise my arms to the great light of the presence and ask for its healing currents. Then taking the right arm of the baby like this, to illustrate how to go about the method of calling and manifesting a healing, I reached over to Our Lady of the Healing, took her right arm, and said, Let it rest upon your left hand and arm, while with the right I would suggest that you image Jesus doing the work instead of yourself, gently stroking the arm, beginning at the shoulder and drawing your right hand over the arm and hand, over first, then under, carefully, so as not to hurt the arm, nor pull on the arm or bandages which the doctor had placed thereon. First over, then under, about 7 times. Then go wash your hands. Upon finishing, I smiled at Our Lady, who turned on her heel and left the hall. I forgot her promptly, refusing to be disturbed by anyone leaving. Sometimes people came great distances and had to leave early before the class was ended to catch a bus or a train. I continued reading and replying to questions. After the service was over and I had left the platform, my secretary told me the rest of the story. Did I remember the lady whose hand I had held and used for an illustration in answer to the question about the crushed arm of the baby? Yes, I did. Did I know her arm had been severely burned that afternoon? No. Did I know that she had left the hall? Yes. Did I know that she had gone to the washroom? taken off her bandages, and found her arm healed, with no signs of the burns left. No, but I thank God for it. I am the Ascended Master Consciousness, which Jesus the Christ attained, and through that consciousness I am enabled to do the things he did, and with them achieve my ascension. For this healing I can take absolutely no credit. I must assure all of you who read of it that I of myself can do nothing, but the Father doeth the works. So I thank God for whatever part I was permitted to play, and Jesus the Christ for his aid. For he said, I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it thee. John 11:22.
All our praises, all our worship.
Miracles of Today, Chapter 18, Episode of the Healing Sun. Have you been chastened by man and circumstances? Have ye lived through trials and tribulations? Have ye thought at each turn, this is too much, this is the end, and yet survived? Then on your knees, man, and thank God, for whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth. Brother Bill. I have made the earth and created man upon it. I, even my hands, have stretched out the heavens, and all their host have I commanded. Isaiah 45:12. In a city where we had several marvelous classes, the students were making wonderful progress in the use of the law. One of these students, however, had the misfortune to become ill enough to need the services of a surgeon. A decision was reached between the patient and the doctor in regard to the treatment necessary, and if what seemed to be a growth did not give way, the only alternative would be an operation. The time limit was set when I was asked to do whatever it was in my power to do. I myself can do nothing. I am the healer. God is the light. 1 John 1:5. While ye have light, believe in the light, that ye may be the children of light. John 12:36. The Son of God is the spiritual sun. It is a great healing power. If the student will use it, visualize it, they will not need any other assistance. So I asked my secretaries and the students who were present to visualize a rising sun at the patient's heart. Then, I said, when you are seeing it in full glory, like the sun at noonday, rising, expanding until it is full size, that is, larger than and enveloping the patient, shining in all its grandeur, then visualize Jesus or any other ascended being appearing in its heart. He grows and expands his light as the sun did, until his light and the spiritual sun are one. He continues to expand until the sun is his heart, and the patient is bathed in the effulgence, and the physical body is irradiant. Then, whatever growths or troubles, aches or pains that may be in the body are solved, dissolved, if you please. All is well. Some people close their eyes to visualize. I usually keep mine open. When I saw that we all had finished our meditations, I gave a sign and we tiptoed out of the patient's room. The next day my secretaries informed me that the swelling, which had given no indication of abating or receding the night before, had broken that morning at daybreak. Then surgery was not required. A week later the patient, who had spent several weeks in great agony, was at home and in peace. The next day we were called to visit a child in the same city. The child had a so-called contagious disease. The crisis had not yet been reached. This disease, it was said, often left complications in its wake. Would we work for the child? It is my privilege and pleasure to work for God's children of light. We repeated the instructions for the babe as we did for the adult with the growth, visualizing the heart as a sun of light, and expanding in light and radiance until the sun is like the noonday blaze. Then, imagining Jesus in the sun's center, sitting on a throne. He arises, and as he does so, he expands, grows in stature, saying, I am no longer the babe of Christ. I am now grown to full stature. So saying, he takes full command, and the babe and the sun disappear in his glorious radiance. No need to tell the rest. The child lost all symptoms of the disease which threatened him, and in a few days was well and at home again with Mommy and Daddy. But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness arise with healing in his wings. Malachi 4:2. Miracles of Today, Chapter 19, Episode of the Roofing Paper. The eagle, from his lofty eyrie, descends into the valley to procure food for his brood. A storm finds him unaware of the sudden gusts which taunt him. Does the trouble force the eagle to yield? Nay, he sets his wings so that each gust of the storm aids him to rise above the earth. Take the lesson, my son, from that bird, and make yourself master over trouble rather than let trouble master you. Brother Bill. Thus saith the Lord, the Holy One of Israel and his Maker. Ask me of things to come concerning my sons, and concerning the work of my hands command ye me. Isaiah 45:11. When I first started in the use of the laws of life, it was very marvelous to feel the expansion and progress that I was aware of making, in spite of all my errors. Often one will word an affirmation negatively or use the power wrong, but as in all things, one learns by experience. Like most students who are beginning the use of the law, they must learn when and where they may not interfere in another's world. Yet when they are in the right, they have the power of the universe at their command. The student is to be likened to a wave in the ocean. When the ocean is turbulent, the waves are of many shapes, sizes, and powers. So too the student may feel that all beings are different, some using more power than others. The waves of the ocean are all a part of the great ocean, yet individual in a sense. They come and they go. If they only realized it, had consciousness, they could have the power of the whole ocean behind them. So too the student of the laws of life. They are all a part of God, yet feel apart from God in consciousness. They come and they go like the waves of re-embodiment. Yet if they but knew it, they have the power of the entire life wave behind them to use as did Jesus and other teachers. This episode took place in the home of my father, on the south side of Chicago. My father had suggested that I help him fix the roof. It had been newly tarred and graveled a short time before, but a corner at one end had not been sealed properly. The result was that the wind had played havoc by ripping the tar paper and tossing it back and forth. At first it was only a small tear in the paper. Later it was several large ones. Each time the wind caught it, flipping it back and forth, the gravel rattled on the roof and some went down on the porch and steps. One night it was quite windy. The rattling and flapping of the torn paper and the falling gravel was anything but conducive to good meditation. Mine was the back bedroom near the continuous grating and rattling, and I could stand it no longer. I jumped to my feet, called for light and the powers of light, like Aisha in Rider Haggard's book. Great Presence of Life, release whatever power of light is necessary to take command of that roofing paper and place it in divine order. Seal it so that the wind and the rain cannot affect it. I call the powers of light to release whatever power of light is required to take command of the situation right now. The wind died down in a few minutes, and that stopped the flapping of the paper. With that, the stones stopped their rattling and falling, and all was peace once more, so I could continue my meditations. Saturday afternoon, I went up on the roof and found that the terrors had been sealed. Now my father believed in God, in fact, was treasurer for the church to which he belonged, the French Evangelic Church of Chicago. But he was like so many other Orthodox churchmen. He thought the day of miracles was over. Whatever else he believed, it had nothing to do, evidently, with the statement of Jesus. Whatsoever you shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it you. Or, ye shall ask what ye will, and it shall be done unto you. My father had heated the tar and had things ready for me to fix the roof. So to make my part right, I took the tar, spread it about, swept the roofing gravel over the tar, and thanked God from whom all blessings flow. Believest thou this? Said I not unto thee, if thou wouldest believe, thou shouldest see the glory of God? John 11:40.
Praise God from whom all blessings flow.
Miracles of Today, Chapter 20, Episode of Walking on Water. Look deeply in yourself, my son, to find that which agrees or disagrees with others. We easily agree with that which amplifies our previous belief. Conversely, we easily disagree with that which upsets our preconceived opinions or notions, whether they have basis or not. There is only one sure arbiter, the Christ within. Look to it, then silence and wait. Brother Bill. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer, it is I, be not afraid. Matthew 14:26 and 27. Some folks may snort, scoff, deride, and otherwise try to talk away or around this episode. Yet it happened as surely as I live and breathe. You may ask, if you know that people will likely deride your experiences, why tell about them? Why cast your pearl? My beloved friends, I don't do it for them. Rather, I do it for those who may be aided and comforted. These miracles are published to give confidence to those who are on the threshold of truth and need the assurance that I may be enabled to render, just as Jesus and others have so often aided me. I too pass on to those of you who will accept it, so that I in turn may have my cup replenished. It was in February, after a cold snap. In Chicago, a small neighborhood park had been my habitat during the hours from 9 to 12 every morning. During those hours, I circled the lagoon by a path which bordered its shores. When I say I circled, that is not quite right, because this park had a lagoon which was shaped more like an elongated figure 8. I chose this path around this figure 8 for my study ground, to make my decrees, where I visualized and affirmed. The previous week had been warm enough so that there was no labor to my ramblings around and around, time after time, giving my affirmations and thanking God and thinking good. But one night the barometer fell, so did rain, which later became sleet and snow. The trees were covered, as was all else. Even the electric and telephone wires were covered with a magic substance, an icy, frosty covering, creating a scene of winter beauty and grandeur. The lagoon was frozen, and one part of it, the top loop of the figure 8, was closed for skating and other ice sports. So instead of passing around the top loop where there were dozens of hilarious children and grown-ups, I took the opportunity of walking over the ice just short of the barrier, thus avoiding the noisy merrymakers. Thus my meditations were only slightly interrupted, yet I circled only the larger loop. This cold spell lasted for 2 weeks or more, You can see that I made many, many trips on the path encircling the lagoon, crossing over on the ice at a point where the loop of the figure 8 was narrow, like a bottleneck. Habit is a curious taskmaster. Force of habit is also a peculiar thing. Ofttimes one does things through force of habit that he would not otherwise do, especially when in deep meditation. This morning in question, I left my home in concentration over a problem which had arisen. By the time I had arrived at the park and started my daily work, as I called it, my mind was full of light, and I was in ecstasy over light's answer to my call. A beautiful vision was given me, and I held to it as long as possible, walking, meanwhile, around the loop of the lagoon as I had done in the last 2 weeks or so, crossing over the ice at the neck of the figure 8. On this morning the sun shone with a warmth that was a joy to feel. On each trip about the path, it was my custom, when facing the sun, to give recognition to the one called Helios, and also to the Archangel Michael. In the midst of my meditations, an interruption came that jarred my senses so that I came down to reality with a jolt. I looked around me in consternation. I was at the bottleneck portion of the joining of the loops of the figure 8 when I realized that there was no ice under me. Then, like Peter, I began to sink. Luckily, I had almost crossed, for I sank only to my waist before I touched bottom and waded the rest of the distance to shore and thence home for dry clothing. During the night previous, a warm spell had melted the ice, and how many times I had walked across the neck on water that day, I cannot say. My meditations had kept me too busy to notice that the crowds were no longer skating. Force of habit had kept me walking over the same path that I traversed for the last 10 days or more. The Master, in commenting upon the incident, said, "Human beings could walk on water as easily as on land. It is only human consciousness that makes men step into water rather than upon it. Man, know thyself is a much-quoted axiom, but it shows that ye are gods. To the earnest student may this advice be accepted in the same loving spirit in which it is tendered. Try anything that you have the courage to try, but don't talk about it to anyone, anybody. Tell no man," said Jesus. And I like to say, talk to people and trouble grows. Talk to God and trouble goes. So talk to God, for one with God is a majority. The end. Author's note.